Good day and welcome to yet another edition of Press Hour. Every discussion which is made from an egoistic standpoint is corrupted from the start and cannot yield an absolutely sure conclusion. The ego puts its own interest first and twists every argument, every word, and even fact to suit its interests. Paul Brunton. This quote by Paul Brunton describes to a large extent the situation of the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest regions. There are echoes of dialogue that took place this week, just ended, as part of the efforts to end the senseless war. On Press Hour today, we shall be questioning whether dialogue is not the magic one to bring an end to the crisis, but has not been exploited to its fullest. We should also look at the Cameroonian diaspora as an asset to the country's development, but apparently wasted. That's how we're going to look at the world today on Press Hour. To discuss these issues, we have a full house, a panel. Here I'm going to start with Elias Ngalame, who's an old person in the house. Good morning, Elias.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, just next to you is Eugene Fongwa. Eugene Fongwa is an expert in media and development.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, we have Dr. Elvis Mweke, political scientist, University of Boya. Doctor, I know you have so many other titles. Can you let us know in what other capacities?
Okay, thank you for having me, Gillian, and good day, everyone. I'm also the president, the founder of Cameroon Citizen Advice Bureau, and I am the subsection president of CPDM in London, Northeast London.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Elvis has come all the way from the Department of Political Science of the University of Boya. He traveled, used his means, used his time, used his energy for Press Hour. Even he had problems on the way. He said he was not going to stop. He made it here. We are pleased you came.
Thank you very much, Gillian. It's a pleasure.
And close to me, we have Mr. Henshaw Orok Are. Mr. Henshaw Orok Are is an expert in peace and conflict. You're welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon to all our viewers, and also to my co-panelists. I'm happy you invited me. It's my first time being on Press Hour, and it's a program which is watched by many in and out of Cameroon.
We're talking about what the press fed on this week just ending, and that's how we're going to start the program today with the week in review on our slot. Press review by Emanuela Bemne. Emanuela?
Newspapers were at it again, churning out news reports about happenings within and without the country. Supposed talks on a ceasefire in the northwest and southwest regions between government and separatist leaders went viral. The stage is set for peace to return to the northwest and southwest on the Guardian Post as Biya kickstarts proper peace process on the Voice newspaper. Government meets jailed separatist leaders for peace talks, writes the Post. To the scope, hope for return to normalcy as jailed Amba leaders, government begin talks. The Sun writes, government, separatists begin UN-imposed ceasefire talks. The media is clear. Siseko Ayok Tabe confounds government with tough demands. The interest of Le Gideon is on talks between government and jailed Ambazonian leadership that meet mixed reactions. Newswatch reports that ceasefire in view as government, jailed Ambazonian leaders begin talks. The same ceasefire talks carried by the reporter. The Horizon headlines, Ayok Tabe and Co. claim secret talks with government that weren't. Then Cardinal Tumi backs talks between government and Ayok Tabe and Co. on the Chronicle Times. Cameroon Tribune reports that the supposed peace talks do not reflect the reality, even as the mediator confirms talks between government and Siseko Ayok and Co. on the Guardian Post. Before the paper questions ceasefire talks, whose truth is true? To the post-weekender, government hardliners infighting among separatists stifling peace negotiations as power mongers, beneficiaries of juicy war booty, standing in the way of dialogue. Then BIA raises old age incapacity pensions and death benefits by 20% on the horizon. The Guardian Post specifies that the beneficiaries are retired civil servants, as Cameroon Tribune assures that the implementation is imminent as from August 1. Then 4 are injured in a bomb blast in Yaoundé on the Guardian Post as The Voice presents hidden agenda behind multiple bomb blasts in Yaoundé. At a time, a nursing mother is killed in Bamenda by a stray bullet. On the same paper, a man in military attire beats bike rider to death over 500 francs in Bamenda just when military destroys 16 amber camps in Bui, Ngoke Tundia, with 17 fighters, soldiers killed in military raids. Another black weekend is reported for Anglophones on the Guardian Post as John Ebong Ngole, PCC pastor, former Meme education delegate, all die. To The Voice, finance Menchum researcher Awa Nzeyanga succumbs to death. Then death snatches prominent Anglophone varsity don on the Guardian Post. To the post-weekender, Yuba Registrar Professor Victor Banlilon dies. The reconstruction plan receives unwavering support from the Southwest region on the advocate. The Star writes, Minister Tassong charms Southwest beneficiaries. The Eden quotes Minister Tassong, whether gunshots or not, reconstruction must go on. To Echo Outlook, reconstruction plan assured. The Guardian Post, publishing faces of some renowned Anglophones, ask where they are and what they have become. Let's now end our press review with this story on the post-weekender, wherein military and amber fighters clashed over control of lucrative checkpoint. The clash at mile 90 on the Bamenda-Bali-Batibo highway left a soldier and an amber fighter dead. The fighters are said to have sent word to the military to stop controlling and collecting money from drivers on that spot, and the forces of law and order ignored it, leading to the deadly clash. Until I come your way again, this is your Hour with the Press.
Thank you very much, Emanuela. You listened to her talking about dialogue that we're going to discuss today, ladies and gentlemen. And we start straight away with one of our guests, who is a political scientist from the University of Boya, political science, of course. Doctor, that dialogue took place, whatever form. Let's look at the importance of dialogue in ending whatever conflict, argument, misunderstanding, its place in a situation of crisis.
Thank you, Killian. We all know without dialogue, we may not have an agreement, and we will not see the future in one direction as a nation and as a people. And therefore, dialogue is the most important thing in situations like this that we face now, challenging periods. And if we want to talk of dialogue, we are extremely lucky and blessed in Cameroon. And the head of state, President Paul Biya, has actually opened up the avenue of dialogue for the challenges we have in the Northwest and Southwest regions. And when we want to further the dialogue, I will say this is the time. Our people, the Southwest and Northwest regions, the people have suffered enough, and the head of state has actually risen and heard the people's cry. And the dialogue the national dialogue that was offered to the nation is a masterpiece gesture of which we still say thank you for him. And dialogue never ends. Dialogue is a continuous process.
That's what I was going to ask you, is continuous. Are we actually getting out of the crisis with the various open and hidden dialogues that we have had? What is stopping this, given the importance?
I think a lot of people have misunderstood the context of dialogue itself. And when they expect the head of the state to actually sit down with what the state considers as a secessionist movement, it is what we will never get. It defies political theories and legal rules of the international order. Therefore, our people will not be expecting secessionists to stand with the state. The state will never sit with secessionists to talk about an issue involving territorial integrity of the nation.
Good. We are going to come back to that in details. Mr. Orok Ray Henshaw, you are an expert in peace and conflict. This falls squarely within your competence. First, the importance of dialogue, and with reference to the dialogue that has been reported this week.
Dialogue is an important issue too when it comes to conflict management and resolution. Dialogue is very important. We have seen international treaties, international conventions, and other peace settlements which have been taking place in Africa and other parts of the world, and we are talking about Cameroon. When you finally end on the dialogue table. Nelson Mandela showed us when there was apartheid in South Africa. That's a typical example. We have late Secretary General Kofi Annan, who was an architect of dialogue, without forgetting Major Abdoulaye Wade, who later became the head of state in Senegal. He had been solving many conflicts around the world, mostly in West Africa. Dialogue is very important per se the Cameroon situation. The Anglophone crisis has been ongoing for close to 4 years now, and the military and the secessionists have been fighting. Up till now, there's no solution to the problem. So, there are two components in solving a problem. Either you use the hard method, which is war, or the soft method, which is dialogue. And the hard method has been used for all this while. No positive fruits have been yielded. That's why the head of state, President Paul Biya, deemed it necessary to organize a major national dialogue some months ago, which Cameroonians are still waiting for the measures to be implemented. And we saw Minister Tasson, who went down to the northwest and southwest regions to do some reconstructions. But you know, we cannot reconstruct why people are still fighting, because if you reconstruct why people are fighting, they are going to destroy those things, and those reconstructions will not be done on time.
And may not last.
And may not last. And that is why, at the end, during the end of the week, we had some information, although there was a disclaimer from the government that the Sisiku Ayuk Tabe, who is the so-called president of the Banzonian Republic, had some talks with government officials. Many people were happy because when it comes to conflict resolution, dialogue is an important tool. That the soft material is more important than the hard one, because if you force somebody to do something, the person wouldn't adhere to your ideas, and there will be a deadlock into the dialogue. And that's why we are lauding the separatists and the military or the government to come and sit on dialoguing table. We have seen and we have heard how the UN is calling on President Paul Biya and the secessionists to sit down and dialogue so that this problem can come to an end.
The previous speaker said there's no way the government, the state, and secessionists, whom they call terrorists, can sit together. Are you saying that can happen? It
can happen. I can quote the example of Cameroon in Cambodia. They sat on a dialogue table. I can quote the example of even South Africa, although we never had militia. That was another type of issue which was on the table. You cannot say that you not sit on a table and dialogue with a secessionist or those who are against you, because you have an enemy, and in this context, this conflict is a complex one, because you have the Ambazonian fighters, you have many factions, then amongst them you have other civilians who are also kidnapping, raping, as well as killing other people, military as well as civilians. We cannot affirm that you cannot sit on a table and dialogue with secessionists.
In my introduction, I talked about, I quoted Paul Brunton, who says that in a situation of dialogue where egoism takes the front line, central stage, it would be difficult because the two parties will twist everything, will twist words, will even twist facts to suit their interest. What we are saying is that these interests can be put aside.
These interests can be put aside. We can have an example.
Because
like
I think that that's what has made this situation come up to where we are, because effectively it is twisting facts, twisting words, twisting that has made things not to work.
That's what I was saying, that Sisiku Ayok Tabe kept his so-called presidential might to drop it down in the interest of the people, to sit down with some government officials, although there's a disclaimer, but there can never be any smoke without fire. There's something at the backstage making. What is there is that dialogue will take place, go up, come down. Those two people from the government or from the secessionists will sit down and dialogue in order that this conflict should come to an end.
Thank you. One day, yes, Eugene, you listen to them. They have expressed their views on this. First, before you come up, the importance of dialogue. It's a magic wand that we have not exploited.
I don't think dialogue is a magic wand. It's important in that it sets in motion the process of ending a conflict. It's through dialogue that issues are agreed on, and where the parties can actually accept to disagree on certain issues and move forward with a common understanding about where each one starts. So for me, dialogue is really just an avenue to negotiate the end of a conflict situation. And that's what has been missing in our conflict for the last 3-4 years, in that we've all kept entrenched positions, that's all the parties. If you take a position like the one Doc has just mentioned, we can't negotiate with terrorists, that's a very radical and entrenched position. And the other side not accepting any process that's been initiated from Yaoundé, that's also a very entrenched position. I think the goal now in this process is to try to get to a point where both sides understand that dialogue is important, and I think that understanding is beginning to emerge, and that all claims are legitimate. You can't. The only reason you discuss is because there's disagreement. If there's agreement, there's no need for dialogue, and you can't go into that process without acknowledging that everyone has a legitimate claim. You may disagree with the claim, but at least it's legitimate from the perspective of the different parties.
Elias, what is failing that we are coming up to this? Well, like others, just tell us, whatever happened, hidden or open dialogue, disclaimed or not, dialogue is essential for way forward.
Of course, it is essential. And to me, it can be a magic wand depending on what approach or what methodology you use. You know, the government has been touting the Grand National Dialogue as the pathway to peace. But we see that it's not working out. It's just not working out. So to me, I think that it was a wrong approach. When international bodies come here and advise the government for an all-inclusive dialogue, I see that all-inclusiveness to be the main protagonist, the secessionists and the government. But with the Grand National Dialogue, it was like a General Assembly. Every stakeholder came in, and it was just, to me, I didn't, it didn't touch, it didn't hit the nail on the head. So we are looking forward to a situation, a dialogue situation where the main protagonist will sit and we see how that works out.
You're talking about the major national dialogue that took place last year. Mm-hmm. If it is, the recommendations are fully implemented, will it be part of, not saying that you didn't see, will it not be part of the solution?
It's not a matter of whether the recommendations are fully implemented. We have seen the situation is aggravating on the ground. It is not the implementation of those, I remember one of the recommendations was reinforced decentralization. But the protagonists they have their own demands on that they want to be put on the table. The government should listen to them. And then, because to arrive at any positive results, there must be some give and take.
Are you saying, when you look at where we were before the crisis came up, and you see the path we have followed, some people have described the path as appeasement. Others have even described it as concessions. Are we saying that you don't take that into consideration?
The main problem with the major national dialogue is that there was not sufficient participation. I remember I did say that even the special status, which was floated around as one of the key outcomes of that process, if that had emerged from a negotiated process, it would work. The problem is that...
What do you mean by negotiated process?
The problem is that the other party is not part of the process. It's still a descriptive... Remember, if you look at the history of this crisis, it's Yaoundé taking decisions on behalf of the people. And the Grand National Dialogue was very much the same approach, in spite of the fact that you had all of these people come together. The tripartite failed for the same reasons, that it is a process that is driven from Yaoundé to advance pre-set objectives of Yaoundé. And so when people feel that they're not part of it, even if the solutions are correct, they're going to reject it on the basis that it's being imposed on them. And across the world, each time governments have tried to impose, sometimes even in the interest of the aggrieved population, it hasn't worked. But when people participate in arriving at that decision, there are all kinds of mechanisms that you can use to include people in these kinds of processes. They stand a better chance of succeeding.
You talked of dialogue being a process. You cited the tripartite in 1991. You've talked of the major national dialogue of last year, which means it's a process. Don't you acknowledge what just happened?
No. I mean, it's moved a pin, we have a sense that there is a recognition that there is need to talk. Before that event, it was very clear in the public opinion of Cameroonians that the government was unwilling to have a conversation on this issue. The major change, in my view, that came out of that process is that the government now recognizes that there is need to talk, and that you can only resolve or begin to resolve the problem by talking. It failed in the sense that they talked to the wrong people.
Okay, Prof, Dr. Elvis, the government might not have just recognized it now, because I remember government sent some emissaries, some teams to go to the diaspora and talk to the Cameroonians, because it is said that what is happening in Cameroon is generated from the diaspora. What exactly should we do so that this dialogue gets to a step that can lead to the resolution of this problem?
That's a very good question, Killian. And what I would like to ask even my panelists here is that the talk of sitting down, the government should dialogue with who? Who should the government dialogue with? They themselves can tell me they know about 2, 4, 5, 6 leaderships, contentions in the secessionist movement. Who should the government dialogue with? And that is why the head of state, for a man who listens, opened up the national dialogue. It was not restricted, it was all inclusive, so that every party can participate. Now, most of this leadership that they claim has to sit on the table rejected this offer. What should the government do? The head of state and the state has to do a job, and that is listening to the people. The people are suffering, and it offered the dialogue so that we can have an inclusive dialogue from all the parties, regardless of what you stand for as a pro-secessionist movement. The head of state listened to that. Now they're saying that they will not participate in the dialogue. They want to now participate in the dialogue. So who will the government sit down with? Secondly, if we say this is conflict, and we can trace back the roots of this conflict, and we can see that prior to the national dialogue, most of the concerns of the teachers and the lawyers were already resolved by the government.
That's what I call.
That is an additional thing.
That's what I call appeasement and concessions.
Thank you, Killian. And this is not only there. The major dialogue itself has a major opening for elements who are still dissatisfied to bring in input. That's why the head of government, the chairman of the national dialogue, said it is something that is ongoing, and they are still setting their hands to connect with whoever has input, concern, proposals, so that we can build this nation together. So my own concern as a scientist is, should the state kneel down because you have elements who are disagreeing to dialogue? The states have to move on. There are rules in dialogue, in achieving peace, and this is the platform already laid by the head of state.
Thank you. Mr. Orok Ari, we're talking about dialogue. Those people out there who are in the bushes, who are causing the atrocities that we are suffering from, are not abroad, even if it's said that they are teleguided from abroad. Why don't we reduce, according to you as a peace and conflict expert, bring the dialogue to that level, meet by these guys who are in the bush? Is there a way that dialogue can go down that way, following your experience in peace and conflict resolution?
First of all, before I answer your question, I want to paint an ideal conflict resolution setup. When there is conflict, you have to identify the causes, the immediate and remote causes, because in conflict situations, there are always hidden agendas, like what my brother was saying besides me, that the demands of the people, that teachers and lawyers, have been met. But when those people came with those causes, they had hidden agenda for secession or federalism. So we have gone to another stage. And we should identify the leaders who are the head of the various parties so that they can sit down. Then more to that, we also have somebody who has a moral, physical, intellectual probity, who is neutral, who can serve as a mediator between the parties. And sometimes you can even choose a neutral venue where nobody will be intimidated. You have the situation where people sometimes, being maybe in Cameroon, they are afraid that by the time they come out with some points, as they leave the diaspora coming here, they will be arrested. That's why many of them didn't come to Cameroon during the major national dialogue. And you were asking me the question that why is it that those who are in the bushes, we cannot dialogue with them? Those people who are in the bushes have leaders who are abroad. And they receive orders from those leaders. Or those who want to ask me that, who is the main leader? You have many leaders. You have Chris Ano, Sisiko Ayoktabe, Sako, and the rest, who are guiding them, who are sending them fundings and maybe sometimes weapons. I don't know how they do that. You have to sit with those people. Maybe that's out of Cameroon and have a proper setup for dialoguing. And when it comes to this point, there will be a concession, because those people, all the points which those secessionists are going to bring all the government will not be accepted by many. That's what we call secession, or sometimes compromise. And there will be a time frame for those points which were selected by both parties to be implemented, and they should be implemented as quick as possible following the deadline which both parties agreed upon. If not, another party will think that there is dupe that another person wants to implement. So that's why this conflict is ongoing in Cameroon.
Now, before we move out of that topic, that will be the last person. The problem is government cannot sit on the same table in parity with people they don't recognize.
I don't think.
Yes, Eugene?
I mean, that's a very dubious discourse that has been wrapped around this issue, and particularly to avoid an outcome that includes the legitimization of the secessionist movement. Except that the problem with that approach is that that secessionist movement exists, and it's quite strong. The government understands how much it has eaten into the resources of this country. The government understands how much it has affected the economy of this country.
Exactly, that's
that
the point.
problem
Government
exists.
cannot legitimize.
You have to. How are you going to solve it? You at least acknowledge it. Legitimization doesn't mean that you say yes to secession. You acknowledge that, yes, there are people who feel strongly, even if you disagree with that the union doesn't work again. Start by accepting that there are people with those concerns. From there, you may even discover that the outcome of the process would not even be a divided Cameroon.
Thank you. I think that for recognition it has been done is the way forward that there are problems. Which way forward for both parties? That leads us to our second topic for today. And before we discuss the Cameroonian diaspora as an asset that has been wasted to an extent for the development of the country, we are going to listen to this report by Esther Kima.
There are over 5 million who form Cameroon's diaspora and whose hearts still beat for fatherland. They are contributing to the development of the country, especially through remittances that stand at over 590 billion CFA francs as of 2019. To ensure that they become full-fledged actors in the economic, social and cultural development process, Deputy Speaker Honorable Theodore Dato agrees with the network's president, Honorable Jean-Louis Ngacha, that reforms are essential to maximize their outputs.
There are a lot of issues that these guys out there have, that when they're given the opportunity to come back home and contribute, this country will never be the same.
As reiterated by governments, the political will to involve the diaspora is evident through the creation of the Forum for the Diaspora and their participation in the major national dialogue.
We thought that a bank could be created for the diaspora, and some commission put in place to facilitate their coming back to the country.
Meantime, the Parliamentary Network for the Promotion of Social and Solidarity Economy, led by Honorable Duvawisa Aisa, charted their plan of action.
We have tried to bring out the social, economic and solidarity in our country. And this caused the voting of a bill last year. And we are advocating that the bill should be put into practice and proper execution so that our people should know the importance of social, economy and solidarity.
As for the Insurance Promotion Network, Honorable Germany Benilde and his colleagues advocated for better insurance policies.
When you discover that at the time of insuring, everything moves smoothly, but at the time you have a problem, it becomes a problem. This is what the Cameroonian people don't want, and this is what the National Assembly is bent in trying to rectify.
The Executive Committee Bureau was also elected during the deliberations.
There was so much talk about the diaspora in Parliament. It was not exactly that we listened to. There is a network, parliamentary network for the diaspora, decentralization, and people living abroad, Cameroonians. And during the week, they went around lobbying, they went around contacting some institutions, heads of institutions, leaders, opinion leaders, to make sure that the diaspora, the Cameroonian diaspora, can be brought on board to engineer the development of the country. One of the leaders is the Secretary General of that network, Honorable Daniel Ngale Etongo. He's going to tell us exactly some of the things they did this week to make sure that the network works in favor of Cameroon.
The network on decentralization, diaspora and the cross-border cooperation came to meet the minister as it has been the case, because this is not the first outing. We have met with the people at the presidency. We have met with the Prime Ministry and the other ministry before coming here. And we thought that insofar as this ministry is concerned, it has a lot to play with our activity. And so we came to tap from the rich experience of the man heading the ministry and to seek their collaboration to see that we beef up the relationship between our brothers who are abroad and the government by seeing that the rich talents that we have abroad can be used in the country, and that they should also tap from the wealth of the country to make this country great. We have had the audiences. We are going to make trips abroad, and we are going to communicate with our various embassies, because we cannot do anything abroad without passing through the embassies. As you heard from the president, we are going to meet all Cameroonians, no matter their shades of opinion, political leanings, and so on. We want to build this country with the collaboration of all Cameroonians. We are going to tell them that no matter our political leaning, the country interest is first. Insofar as this country is concerned, we should know that politics will pass, but the country should stay. And so it is of our interest to see that we put our hands and heads together to build this nation.
That was Honorable Daniel Ngale Tongo, who is the Secretary General of the Network for Diaspora Decentralization and those living abroad. He was talking there after an audience granted them by the Minister of Communication, and before that there were the Presidency, the Prime Minister's Office, the Ministry of External Relations, and so many other ministries that are directly concerned with making the diaspora, the Cameroonian diaspora, work well. On the panel today, all these four are diaspora. They have lived and studied abroad. Elias, Eugene, Dr. Elvis, and Mr. Henshaw. The four of you have lived there, which means you are square pegs in square holes as far as this topic is concerned. Let me take first the example of Dr. Elvis and Yes, yes, your example is glaring because you had a job over there, a good one, you lived there, and you decided to come back home.
Yes.
Tell us your experience.
My experience is this. His Excellency Pobia, the head of state, is a man of great vision. That's why there's no doubt he's still the captain of the Cameroon ship. He has seen and he knows the value of the diaspora. Yeah, you can see that most of his efforts recently have been to bring in the diaspora because he knows the savoir-faire of the diaspora. He himself, of course, was once a diasporan. So
your experience?
My experience is that the head of state has called us home and has brought us together.
What were you doing there?
Before, prior to that, I would have said, okay, I got a life. I'm in the diaspora. I'm in England. I got a good job in the army, and this is my life. But I could see the vision of the head of state, who is bringing forth this idea of us all coming together and build our nation. That call itself is great. That's why, with that, it gives me hope that I'm not alone. Together, if I leave what I'm doing abroad and I come back and I do it here, it will give a leverage for the development of our nation in a small way. But if we all do it together, as you see, my brothers, it will go a long way. Of course, there's already development here. We're only coming to help as well, to forge ahead.
Doctor, let me ask you this question. Don't you think it was easy for you because you were leaving one good job to another diaspora, to another good job in Cameroon?
When you look at, when I go by that perspective, I feel it is something as if I'm being forced. I don't want to look at it that way. I want to look at it as if our nation deserves better. And our father, the father of the nation, has given us that opportunity to make a nation that is greater. And this is the time that the diaspora has to also chip in their own contribution to move the nation forward.
Okay, we're going to go into the nitty-gritties of the topic to see how the diaspora can help the country move forward. But before we get there, we're going to take a round of the table. Mr. Henshaw Orok Are, you lived abroad for long, studied abroad. What was your experience?
The experiences were mixed experiences. Why? Because I began working with the United Nations International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda in Arusha, Tanzania. Diaspora is not only Europe or America.
But you were that way also?
Yes. So I worked there. I had all the opportunities to be enrolled in another international organization, but I had to come back to serve my country. And prior to that, I'd undertaken online courses, 22 within all the continents in the world, 2 in Harvard, 1 in Yale, Queensland 2, where I had 2 micromasters, University of Hong Kong, University of Pennsylvania, University of Georgetown, University of London, Geneva, you name the rest. And this has also permitted me to publish 4 books in the US, in Germany, and 2 in France.
Let's be talking more about the experience. You lived there, you came back. Why didn't you stay? You decided to come back.
Yeah, as I was saying that, I came back because I know that President Paul Biya counts a lot on youths, and the youths are the people who are going to have this country in the future. He has always been saying in his speech that youths are people who he wants to work with them. And more to that, during the recent appointments of the Secretary Generals, we saw many youths coming in, like the Secretary General in the Ministry of Basic Education, Mr. Oyuno. You saw the Secretary General at the Ministry of Public Contracts, Chancellor Ako, who is also a youth. Those are people who are in their 40s. So that's why I came back, because I know that the future is in Cameroon, the future is in Africa.
Well, maybe your own appointment is coming. Eugene.
We hope so.
Eugene.
No, my situation is perhaps quite unique in that I went abroad for studies after building already a career in Cameroon in the media. But what was interesting is that I also felt that my career prospects were better off in Africa than I studied international development. It's only Africa and the rest of the developing world where the opportunities to put to use some of the knowledge is available. And it's been a good decision, in part because the realization is that the solutions for Africa have historically been designed, crafted abroad, and tried to be implemented on the continent, and we've seen how they have failed. The World Bank, for example, almost works on a ad hoc basis when it comes to development in Africa. They try new initiatives, they fail. They take up new ones, they fail. And that's been because the African people have not been involved in that process. It's my view that international development can only work, and development as an indication of progress can only work if Africans are driving it.
May I also ask you, did you not come back because you had a future, you had something better?
No, I had a very moral reason for coming back. I was given a PhD. I would have stayed there and done that PhD. I said, no, I'm going to come back for the PhD, but I have to go back to Africa, work for a couple of years and come back for it. So I had an opportunity as well.
Okay, Elias?
Yes. Well, mine was, I left the Herald. When I left the Herald, I went to Germany for greener pastures, as I discovered journalists, and thought all out there was just too rosy out there. But I found myself, first of all, I had language barrier in Germany, and I found myself doing the manual jobs, and I had divided attention. It's not easy separating with your family. Leave your family here and you are out there. 2 years, 3 years down the lane, I said, what? My God, is this how I'm going to continue? And I took that decision to come back home. I knew I was going to make it back home.
Welcome back.
Yep.
We are going to continue with you. What contribution, before we get to that, what is making some of our Cameroonian compatriots staying there when some of them even have the opportunity to come and have good jobs like Doctor did, like Eugene did, like Henshaw also did, and like you also did? What is holding our countrymen and women over there and making them stay instead of coming back?
Well, I would like to say that this is opinionated. Everybody has his own decision why they decide to stay back or for long or things of that nature. There are some who are making it out there, and you can feel the impact of what they are doing back home here. It is true that there are others out there who are failing, yet they don't accept that they are failing to return home and change their situation. It is their decision to stay and continue the way they are continuing. But sincerely, those of them who are succeeding out there are contributing enormously to the growth of our economy. If you know the amount of remittances sent home on a daily basis, because of pressure in state treasury and all that, the circulation of money has been very difficult. It's thanks to those remittances that the economy is turning in some way. Look at our second-hand goods market, what they commonly call brokering. It has made access to some of those durable products a bit easy for Cameroonians. So I think they are really contributing in boosting the economy in that direction.
Yes,
I don't want to go into the political
and I allowed you to speak because you are the publisher of the Economic Outlook. Eco Outlook, and yes. I allow you to talk about the economy. Yes. Eugene, what makes some of our brothers and sisters feel reluctant or even feel repulsive coming back home?
No, I think you must not mistake the fact that some people have chosen to come back with the idea that it's an easy decision to take. There are a number of structural problems that need to be lifted. And I think that our approach has been to look at the diaspora and see how we can accommodate the diaspora rather than fixing the local and make it attractive. Because it's attractiveness that determines how people migrate. And as we have very good examples, what a country like Ghana did was to make Ghana attractive for the diaspora. And a lot of Ghanaian diaspora, including the African diaspora, are returning to Ghana.
You're making a very good point. What do you mean by attractive?
There are many things you can do. I mean, that environment involves a lot of things. But good examples would be, for example, making it easy for people to bring in money. You would, in spite of what Ngalama says, you would be surprised that it's actually quite difficult to bring money into some African countries. I remember there are a couple of banks that made very interesting moves, opened branches in London, in Asia, where the diaspora could deposit money, and that account is accessible from Nigeria, for example, from Ghana, for example. And this was really resolving the problem of people being able to move certain amounts of cash from the diaspora onto the continent. And it's still a very big problem in the country. The second thing is that there's no structure. Most of the money that's coming from diaspora is going into family investment. It's paying for education. That's good. But we don't yet see a lot of diaspora money going into huge investments. There's possibility for us to make the business environment attractive enough for people to come into this country with bags of money and put into sectors. And
Eugene, we stay with you. Don't you think that the blocks put on the way of bringing money is because it is reported repeatedly that some of the money come to sponsor illegal transactions, movements in the country? Sometimes,
if you close your eyes to evil, you wouldn't see righteousness. There's no way you're going to come out of. You're going to use one excuse and deprive the economy of badly needed resources. We have systems in place to be able to track money. People have been talking about why we still such a monetary cash-based economy. The government itself does business in cash. if we had evolved where you can trace money, track money, get to where it's coming, we solve those problems. Yes. It's really because we don't have the infrastructure to accommodate these changes that are needed.
Eugene, I have indications that one of our guests who is in North Carolina is on the line, is Professor Victor Mba. He's going to tell us the potential, the potential of the diaspora in terms of technology, in terms of other things that can make the country go forward. Prof, good morning, good day, and welcome to Press Hour.
Well, it's my honor to be appearing on CRTV Press Hour again. I've always been privileged to be a part of your show. This is a wonderful show, and I want to congratulate your entire team there at Press Hour for the great job you are doing. Well, the Cameroonian diaspora is very, very strong. We have a lot of people that are very highly educated, not just here in the United States, but throughout many countries around the world, even including countries in sub-Saharan Africa, such as South Africa. There's a large Cameroonian diaspora that have all kinds of degrees you can think about, from bachelor's all the way to PhDs. And by the way, I'm not yet to talk about just the very educated or formally educated diasporans. There are Cameroonian diasporans that may not have any formal education, but they're doing very well in business, and that can contribute greatly to our beloved country, Cameroon. So not just in the area of academia, but also in the area of business, Cameroonian diasporans can contribute to their countries in major ways. By the way, you may not be aware of this, but according to World Bank statistics, let's just take the statistics from 2019, last year, over 500 billion, with a B, dollars, were sent by diasporans of different countries back to their home countries. Now, I don't have the exact statistic for Cameroon, but millions and millions of dollars leave from different parts of the world to Cameroon from the diasporans. So that in itself is a huge economic potential to help boost the economies, the economy of Cameroon or all parts of the country. We are privileged, me personally, to have brought an initiative to Cameroon called the ICT University that is serving many Cameroonians and educating them and providing employment, and etc., which is an initiative I launched also in other developing countries around the world. But I'm most proud of what we did in Cameroon. My example is an example of how instead of us, those of us in the diaspora, to sit and criticize Cameroon, we can practically contribute to the development of our country. My father always tells me to do things for people without expecting anything back from them. I think we should have that attitude, every member of the diaspora, to be able to contribute and give back to the country that educated us. I had free education in Cameroon, going through the government schools. I never went to boarding school. So I owe it to my country to pay back. And as a professor, especially an professor today, I'm really honored to contribute back to my great country, Cameroon.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much for accepting to contribute to our discussion today from North Carolina in the United States of America.
Yes, I really want to thank you too again, and thank the entire crew of the Great Press Hour at CRTV and all the other shows. I've had the privilege of being a part of this great national station. It's always my honor, and please feel free to get me in anytime. I'll be in Cameroon after Uncle Corona disappears. I plan to be in Cameroon probably before the end of September. So thank you again, and God bless you, and God bless our great nation, Cameroon.
Thank you again. You're welcome. Thank you, Prof. Professor Victor Mbarika, speaking there live from North Carolina. I'll come back to you before we get Elvis Deke, who is already here with reactions on this program. I'm going to ask you, Dr. Elvis, what can we do to bring back the diaspora in Cameroon?
That's a great question. The diaspora, we have about 5 million in number. That's the population out of Cameroon. 5 million, that's a lot. And considering their assets, considering them being an asset to this country's development, part of this country's development, it means that we need to create an enabling environment that will facilitate a lot of movement in, investment in, and coming back home for good. And for sure, I can state this, that the head of state has made this enabling environment a successful one, and it's a continuous business with him. Because I would say I wouldn't be here without these facilities, this facilitation that I'm talking about. You can see that all the major recruitments around the nation these days, you always have the possibility of the diasporans to be eligible to apply for these jobs. This is wonderful. Okay. It was not like that in those days. This is the head of state who understands that he has people out of the nation who are part of this nation and who together will build it and move it forward.
Thank you. We have Elvis Deke already here. Elvis, what are the reactions? How many reactions do we have, and what are they saying?
Yeah, quite a good number of reactions that we may not be able to read all, but let's go straight away to Enomani Samuel, who says dialogue is what people are saying, but there's no need to go to dialogue with pre-prepared expectations. And Mary Kilachin says, yes, dialogue is obvious, but the time wasting is exaggerating. Cho Waters IA says dialogue can be the gateway out of the Anglophone crisis if the main actors are invited to the dialogue table while ceasefire is going on. And he also says Cameroon diaspora can be a wasted asset because they have never contributed to peace building. And Ndi Komino Joel says the solution to the crisis is dialogue and the silencing of guns. And Elvis Tata Gariba say people must always dialogue to avoid bloody confrontations, no matter how long this may drag. And we conclude with Al Travis Pende, who says dialogue is very vital in conflict resolution, and the masses are suffering from the government, and the government needs to implicate a solid dialogue without any ending on papers.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elvis Deke, for giving us what the public thinks about our topic for today. We had two topics. I'll come back to the panel, beginning with you, Mr. Orok Ari Henshu. We are talking about wasted diaspora. On the one hand, they are not contributing enough. On the other hand, as Eugene said, as Doctor said, we need an enabling environment. So who is to blame for this?
The blames are on both sides. I'll first start by the side from the government, because the government has not made it possible that there should be dual nationality, and most of our diasporans they have dual nationalities. Secondly, those who want to come and establish businesses here in Cameroon, they have problems of a lot of taxes, and it's making them not to continue to do their business activities here in Cameroon. On the other side, I want to blame the diasporans, because we have seen through this crisis, we've noticed that the diasporans have been fueling more anger, more destruction upon this crisis. They don't want to give a total listening ears, and civilians are suffering. More to that, I want to also call upon the diasporans to be implicated into issues concerning Cameroon when it comes to positive issues. Like, for example, we saw the diasporans who attacked the head of state, President Paul Biya, when he was in his hotel in France and other parts of Europe. That's not a good image. When we have problems, we have to solve the problems within our own kitchen. We should not expose our own people, because others are not doing as we are doing. And I want to just give a small conclusion that the diasporans should be confident that things are changing in Cameroon, because we have some of them who have been there for 10, 20 years, don't know the realities of Cameroon, and they still think that Cameroon is how they left it 20 or 30 years ago. Thank you very much. What are we to conclude the program today? Press R, on which you had Elias Ngalambe. He is a publisher of the Echo Outlook. You had Eugene Fongwa, expert in media and development. You had Henshu Orogare, expert peace and conflict, and Dr. Elvis Ngwoke, political scientist, University of Boya, who came all the way just for the program. Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for being there.
It was a pleasure.
And it is on that note that we end today's edition of Press Hour. A rebroadcast comes up tomorrow. Another new program comes up next Sunday. Stay blessed.
A lovely, lovely Sunday to all of you who are watching us from the east, the west, the north, the south, and whichever part of Cameroon you may be in. At this point in time, we are saying happy Sunday to you and welcome to Tam Tam Weekend. We hope your week was great, and we are just crowning your week